Okay, this is a exhausting process of trying to start a radio type station. For one thing, I think it's kind of a mistake for me to choose a name on this, but I also think that for now I'm going to call it Savage Insomniac Radio. I always tell people I don't think it's a good idea to use names and things like tattoos and stuff. So I'm hearing myself say that it's not a good idea for me to call this Savage Talk Radio, and that is a name that I call my own. So I am not sure. Her Savage Insomniac. You can see I'm not committed. So anyway, I'm. This is episode 7, and so we're having a little issue with our recording devices, and that's a whole topic of discussion right there in and of itself. The iPhone, but I wanted to talk about toxicity today, and I am speaking mostly about relationships when I say that are romantic. However, I'm a big fan of pretty much every relationship is starting to look important to me, and some of them even more so than like a marital or a domestic partnership is. And so this applies everywhere, like your friends and your acquaintances and people that you meet at the store, and if you're in school or in the workplace, everybody is going to have an impact on us. And so if we have toxicity in relationships of any kind, it's significant. And so I was talking to somebody and I said, I've had a lot of judgment leveraged against me about my relationships. And one of the most common questions I get is, why did you do blah, blah, blah? I actually don't want to even. It's usually, why did you stay? It's not just why did you stay, but it's what were you expecting? It's gotten more ballsy. Sorry to use the word, but if it works, I'm going to. And it's like, and my answer has always been kind of defensive. I mean, it's super defensive. I mean, it's like, why are you asking me that? Why didn't you ask blah, blah, blah? Why do I get asked that question? I'm not the one who did the inappropriate action.
No.
But regardless, I get asked this question a lot about various things that have happened to me, usually that weren't good, and I'm asked why I allowed it or why. It's a very, very pop psych thing to ask somebody, and actually even most psychologists wouldn't, and I say most because a lot of them are getting weird. Anyway, okay, I was talking about this toxicity issue. I want to move on because otherwise it'll just get really long. And I said, and this is my thing, I've not seen this anywhere, so this is me publishing it too, again. It's true that there are a lot of fish in the sea, and it's also true that the sea is contaminated with mercury. Now, all the fish have some mercury and toxins in them. It's hard to tell how much a particular one has, and so one gets the few confused with the ones filled with toxicity. I noticed that a lot of people want to blame the person fishing, but that's not really fair, is it? And I'm quoting myself, but I mean, this is the problem. I'm going to discuss my own discussion, my own quote. The problem is that none of us goes out and, we don't go to the supermarket literally. And when I was telling my daughter this, we don't go up and go, I want some fish, and I'll take that stuff there. I can tell it has more mercury in it, but I actually want it anyway. I've never been in a, granted I was vegan for a number of years, but I still walking past there a lot. I've never seen a person ask for toxic fish. In fact, they seem to be looking for stuff like sustainably, so whether it's sustainably grown, it's weird with fish, so sustainably sourced or whatever, We're looking for fish that are wild, not farm raised. And we're looking for fish that are not predatory, that are smaller, that have less mercury in them. And if we could see that, it would be so much easier. It really would, because you know that some of the, even in the supermarket, it'd be easier, even with just the variety of them, to see this one has more, right? You just walk up to it and you're like, oh boy, I don't want to get that one today. I can't, probably shouldn't. Or maybe I should never get it. And the thing is this same thing applies to human relationships. It's not as though you walk up to somebody usually and you're like, oh wow, they're toxic. I want to be around them. It doesn't happen. It's not, I've never known any, well, okay, I have seen a few people that they seemingly do want a bad guy and they seemingly state it flat out. But, and I've known a couple of women, to be fair, and one in particular that was just flat out with me, told me she was not a nice person, that I would find that out. I did, by the way, she was correct. Wow, that was not something I want to experience. So, some people are toxic and they tell you. That was like a one-time deal. That's a one thing. It's never going to happen for me again. I don't think, where somebody just comes right, well, actually, you know what? I take that back. Another person that I know also informed me about, I'm going to use a gender neutral thing here, just because I want to, their toxicity. And I was like, you're proud of this? So that's two. Because the toxicity, Mercury's rising, man. It's going up here. And the mercury levels are high in society, man. And so when I go out to go fishing, you know, figuratively, for friends even, I am pulling up some toxic bullshit. And I'm wondering what's going on. Why am I getting this? I wondered after a point, if you pull up and your mind, this is my experience, okay? Let's say there's 20 fish. The chances are, for me, the chances are 19 or more, this is terrible, are going to be toxic. So it's probably, I'm not going to get a full person out of 20.
It's really sad.
It's sad. And so at that point, and you can say, well, then it's me maybe. I don't think so. I think if you heard me out on some of these stories, and you don't want me to do this on here because I'll be going on and on and on, you would be like, wow, why did you even stay for a week? And that's a whole other thing. And the simple answer is, I don't really like the question. So if you're asking it, why? Because you're hearing what I just said about the Mercury. But at the same time, why is because Stockholm Syndrome. That's why. That's my easy answer still to anybody asking. Stockholm Syndrome, Stockholm Effect is why I stayed. But I also am starting to see that there's just a lot of toxicity out there. And after a point, and no, it's a slippery slope thing too. You don't want to go down the slope that just because everyone I knew that was toxic pretty much is. I have to tell you, I have very little contact with low toxic people. I knew a guy that worked down at the store. He was nice. He worked down at the store. He is nice. We really liked seeing him. It's too bad he had to go out of the store. We don't like the store anymore.
We were really going there because of
We
him.
stayed there for him. So the store got so mercury ridden that when my daughter and I go into the store, and I don't want to talk about which store it is, but it's on 82nd, and it has an orange and green neon sign. Okay? We go in there and we try to get out of there as fast as possible. You would think that something bad was going on in the store. You would think that someone was tormenting us in the store, the way we walk around that store. The reason I know that it's different is that there's another store with an orange and green neon sign on Powell. And when my daughter and I go in there, we often kind of find ourselves dawdling. So what does that tell me? Well, if I had a mercury reader for toxic in humans, it's higher in that store. Toxicity levels higher. I don't know why. And we can't handle it. Our bodies can't handle it. Our energetically. And I hate to sound new agey. And I know some people are going to think I do. But energetically, you just want to race out of the store. We were in a store tonight. It was really, really abandoned in the parking lot. Very few people. You could see another store had some people at it. And you're like, God, I wish I were over there. At least there's some people. They might be toxic, but there's a chance they might not be. In this parking lot, you were worried because there aren't that many people, right? And there aren't that many people in the store. with the odds I have, my body is already in fight or flight entering the store. My daughter knew it. By the time we walked up to the store, as the store is closing, I'm sorry if this is too much for you, I'm telling you, but I want to. So we walked up, and the store is apparently closed, right? But it is actually 8:53 or something, and so the store is not closed,
It's 7
right?
more
Sorry, was it
minutes.
8:53 or 7:53?
No.
Okay. And so there's a man behind these, opening magical doors that we all love to go through. And it's not opening. And my magic is like, what? Why is the door not opening? It says open. This is the thing where you stand there and it opens. And the man is there and he's just not paying attention. And he's not going to look
I'm not paying
because he's
attention at
done.
all.
He's closing the store down early. And I said, my daughter, is it closed? And she's, no, I don't think so. And so we're looking. And this woman comes, from behind. She's coming up. And I said to her, is the store closed? Because the man has not looked at me or anything. No one's acknowledged my presence. And I'm there. He knew I was there. And I asked her, she said, no, the store's open. I came to pay my bill. So she asked him, and thank God for her. This leads me into part of my discussion. This woman was, I think, you say Eastern European descent? I hate to be that vague. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be more specific than that because I think it's rude to be more specific. But she's a really lovely woman, and I thanked her. And she was trying to let me go in front of her, and I told her, no. So I just did what I just said, thank you so much for getting us into the store. Like, I don't think we would have. I think we would have left. Because we don't have very good assertiveness skills. My daughter and I are working on it. But we have been pounded down by this pandemic. We were already struggling as it was. And we have been hit by a ton of toxic, mercury-ridden people. And I am sorry if any of them hears this. But I am also not sorry. Because if you are here and you're listening to this, and you are one of those people, so for instance, your name starts with a T and ends with an A. If you're hearing this, you so desperately can actually change. Okay, like I believe that people have the capacity to change. If you have narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder, it's not the same thing at all. So completely different though, that bipolar disorder, although just people that get around me, they're really crazy when they get there. I don't know what's going on. But it's hard because some of it is an empathetic thing. If you've got those personality disorders and it's hard you can't, I'm not sure you can create empathy in the way that you may want to experience it, but you can cognitively get it. So I hope people, if they listen, that they might be able to learn some things, learn social cues, learn to understand that people feel pain. And if it sounds like I'm describing somebody who might be a little bit, I'm not talking about anyone now in particular, I'm talking about people in general, psychopathic, I actually am. Because these traits are like that of a psychopath. I'm not sure they 100% meet the definition of it, but I always have believed that they have the definition of the psychopath thing wrong. And I don't want to get off into that yet. I might want to say that for a different thing because it just will get long if I discuss psychopathy on here. I don't like the way it's being thrown around, the word psychopath, especially with the way that it is. It's like being thrown around like everyone's really batshit crazy that's a psychopath. And I don't really want to talk about that. But anyway, my concern is that with this toxicity being such a high level, how do we go about in our daily endeavors without getting harmed, and also without feeling like our day is always foul or fouled because of it, because you're going to come in contact with these people. And myself, I'm very sensitive to negativity. I'm very sensitive to any type of input. Even if I walk away from negativity, it still had its impact on me, its lasting impact. And so, how do we go about in functioning? We certainly cannot stay around these people. And I hate to say it, but I mean, if someone did know me that was listening to this, and I'm not talking to them about them in particular, anyone in particular, But I'm sorry if you find yourself here listening to this wondering if it's about you. Because I usually like to work out relationships with my friends and people in my life. I'm almost always open to doing that. But at the same time, I have to ask myself what I'm going to do about the toxicity level because I think it's very high. And to be clear, I think it's high all the way across the board in men, women, and I cannot. I always have to say this. I cannot speak to the public that is unspecified or otherwise identifies in another way. It's not that I'm being exclusive with that part of the public. I literally only have a handful of experiences, and none of them really were bad. I mean, no toxicity really occurred. There could have been a little tiny bit in one interaction. Even that, I think, was maybe a misunderstanding. So, or maybe my issue. So it's not that I don't think there can be toxicity. It's just I have not necessarily witnessed it. You know, maybe once. Yes, one time. I did. Okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's I'm seeing toxicity levels rising. And that led me into another discussion, which is why I don't want to get into psychopathy. I was talking to my daughter about this. We have this iPhone, and it's a bit exclusive. And I was talking to my daughter about that. And I was thinking I might send it back because its audio recording is shit compared to the Android, and its video shit. But it has this application on it where it translates Spanish, and the person's so polite on there. I really like her, and she just does her job. And if she listens to me, and if I screw up, she just tells me. She translates whatever she heard. So I learned something, and I don't feel judged. And I feel like she heard part of what I said. So I feel pretty good, and I'm like starting to speak in Spanish a little bit more. I don't know if I want to get rid of that phone because it might be worth it just for that one thing. I mean it. I'm actually mean it. I'm serious. I might be, and inadvertently, I might be advertising the iPhone. But you should know that I got used, and I got a second. What's it called? SE. A 2020 SE. I got it on a site I can't pronounce the name. It's refurbished, and it's on a site that I'm afraid to pronounce its name. Rebello. Okay. So I've advertised her, and I have no affiliation with iPhone specifically, and with that thing I just mentioned. I can tell you my experience has been okay with the site that my daughter just mentioned, and that the iPhone, I think it's partially a user thing, but it is not the most user-friendly. It has some annoying quirks to it, but we will see because it has a great Spanish app. And so I was talking about that. My daughter was saying that it's a Spain Spanish, like that's a specific type of Spanish. If you don't know what that is, and there's Latin American Spanish, Spain Spanish, there's probably other types, Mexican Spanish, like a bunch of different things, the types of Spanish. And she mentioned that, and I was telling her then that I was thinking about the teacher that I had. It was a very good teacher. I don't want to use her last name, but actually I don't even know that I want to use her name. But she worked locally at the college, at Portland Community College, so I'm not going to use her name because you'll know who she is if I say it. And she was quite awful with me, really discriminatory toward me for some reason. I don't know why. It was weird too, but she had narcissistic personality disorder. But I was telling my daughter that the fact is that I remember stuff that she said because she was a good teacher. And then I started thinking about all my teachers, and the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them had kind of this rugged edge of assertion. And they were kind of on the borderline of being just a bit rude and a bit toxic. And I thought, does teaching kind of go hand in hand with a bit of toxicity? And I thought, I hope not. And then I told my daughter that it's a slippery slope that you don't want to go down. So all I've experienced is mostly teachers that have a toxic twinge to them. Any teacher I encounter must be toxic. That is not, though it doesn't work that way. Maybe I had some bad luck. And plus, I've had some good teachers too. that I can list off. I have just talked to one the other day. She was awesome. Technically, she did tell me that she was not a teacher at the time. I was shocked. I thought she was a teacher and had been for probably at least, what did I say, a decade? Yeah. Very, very, very good teacher. And it's not characteristic of what I have experienced. Someone being nice, talking to me. No wonder she wasn't actually a teacher. That explains it.
Explains.
But I'll have you know that if she opted to be a teacher, she would probably continue to be nice. So you have to be careful with your logic. But I'm still going to allow her to go into this. I'm not going to get into the iPhone too much because that's the whole thing in itself. But I noticed that my European friends and counterparts, the people that I have come in contact with, and people from, and I'm only going to list these areas, like Brazil and Colombia, and I can't think. I think I would probably, I can't say it's all of Europe because it's really, but it is slightly, they're more to say what they think. They say what's on their mind. And I know this isn't quite about toxicity, but it's still part of my thought process, so I'm going to go with it. So it's about communication, and it can really hurt me at times, but they're a lot more punchy with what they have to say. You know, like if they're going to tell you, they're just going to tell you directly. You know, they're not the type to use euphemisms. They're the people that tell you, yes, the person died. They're not with us anymore. They're dead. These are these people. And you're like, you had us at the first time. And I'm not saying that all people that are from these places talk like that either. I want to be clear. Because a lot of it is just assertiveness. And it's actually a good thing. Something I want. But I'll always have that aspect to me where I tell people something and I try to soften it as I deliver it. I don't know why. Probably because I'm an empath. And that's a whole other discussion for another episode. But these people, I'm going to stay on my topic. These people are kind of like the type that will tell you something like, well, if they have to go, I need to go right now. I have to go. I have an appointment. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just have to. So I've noticed, though, that Americans, maybe not so much overall anyway, and this is a bit edgy probably, but I'm still going to do it politically incorrect maybe, but so I've noticed this tendency in Europeans overall, with a few exceptions, to more tell what's on their mind honestly. Like I said, you could call it blunt, and that would be accurate. Blunt or assertive, edgy. And I said, it reminds me of how my Republican friends talk. When they have something to say, whether you agree with it or not, they do not beat around the bush. If you ask about a political figure, what do you think? They shoot from the hip. They have it. That person is blah, 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 blah. Okay? They know. And they know why. They don't pussyfoot around with this. They just say it. When someone asks me an opinion, I remember actually, I can use this example. I feel it's fair. I remember my grandfather-in-law. He said to me one day, he said, what do you think about like undocumented workers? And I said, ha, 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 you're not getting me with this one. I'm not going to discuss this. I was like, because I thought he had me in a trap, like a Republican trap. I was scared, actually. I think I was probably shaking a bit. I did not want to discuss with him. He's a conservative, an old-timer conservative. And he said, well, I said, what do you think of it? That was my diplomatic way of not answering what I thought, by the way. And he said, well, I actually think they do quite good work. They're very fast, and I think they're better workers than their counterparts. So he worked in manual labor a lot. And he was explaining to me how he'd seen, like, you know, the water spouts, how the downspouts come out, and how there's like, I forget what it's called, it's runoff. It's how it takes your water, your runoff off your
Excess
property.
runoff.
And he had seen where these, American teams, and I'm nothing against American teams. I think we should have domestic work, but they'd come in and just put those and just broke it before it was broken before the house had even been used. No one moved in, and he said he watched, a lot of construction work with undocumented workers. He'd seen it, and it just was really well done work. I have to say, I don't think or know, I wouldn't know whether I'd ever had, this is going to sound bad, but I can't check in on everyone, whether they're documented or undocumented workers that come into the house. They work for a contractor's company, though. Everyone that I've had in my house has been working either for a company or subcontractors, and I've had extremely good luck with, well, I have to say, I've had some good luck. I've had some bad luck, but I've had really good luck with Mexican American workers.
Very polite.
They're just very polite. They're, um, you know, and like I said, I'm not saying that, and that's kind of an offshoot of my discussion, because what I was really talking about wasn't those people. I was talking, I wasn't, I'm not talking about like contractors right now. I'm talking about, what am I talking about? Lost it. I'm talking about toxicity. Communication. Sometimes I just,
No, you were talking.
oh, I was talking about people of different ancestry groups though, and I got sidetracked. And one of the things that I am gonna have to do, and I probably said enough where I can stop it unless I come back to it. One of the things I'm gonna have to do is probably keep something that records in the background, and that iPhone could do that, because it doesn't have to be a good recording. Because that way, if I lose my place, I can pause it. Because you know what? You can pause. Can you pause on audio when you're using an iPhone?
Yeah.
Okay, you can pause. I remember you couldn't pause with video.
For whatever reason, you can with audio.
That's good.
You can't with video, but it's good that you can with audio.
So I'm gonna hope that I wrapped up enough of what I said, because I cannot remember it. And that's gonna happen, because when you're not sleeping and you're recovering from chronic viruses and you're in pain and you have cognitive delay, you're gonna have disruptions. So hopefully I'll have something running in the background so I don't have that happen again. But I think I did talk quite a bit about this issue. And the only thing I think I probably would add to that discussion about that whole assertiveness is that I think part of that's actually a good thing. Part of it's a good thing. They have something culturally that I think we don't have, and Republicans are partially in on it. And I will leave it at that. Republicans at least know what they're saying. I remembered what I was going to say. What's up with the liberals? We don't always say what we're thinking. I shouldn't speak for all liberals, but I can say that I'm more afraid to speak. And I think part of that is wrapped up with my political ideology of who I am politically, because it's like I'm kind of, and I hate to say, because I'm not trying to say that we should be politically incorrect, but I think sometimes we are so politically correct that we start correcting stuff that I'm not even sure the people we're talking about would want corrected. Like, for example, I'm always using the word African American because I learned it in academia. And it became popularized in probably the 1990s? It could have been the late 80s. I don't remember. But I'm going to be honest with you, for the most part, and even in my own growing up family, probably would have just used black people or Black American, or use the word African American. Or, I don't know, some really formal word. We just used it. Even the word Native American, I'm not saying it's something to use, or I'm not endorsing. Yeah, I'm even apologizing right now. I just used the word. Oh, I'm not saying you should use the word Native American or not, or Indigenous American or not, or whatever. I don't really have an opinion. You hear me? I'm almost apologetic. Why am I apologizing? Some people who are Native American, or whatever you want to use, whatever term is popularized, actually use the word Indian. They don't have a problem with it. Now that I can speak to. I've met people with, and had been friends with people who are Native American, and they do not understand necessarily what all the discussion is about. And I hate it when people do that, when they cite a group of people and say that. So I'm going to say uniformly that I don't have enough experience to know whether that would be true across the board. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think I should have to alter my speech so much around people. And I say that based on the fact that I'm a minority that gets confused with a lot of different groups of people. And I have to tell you something. There's there's hardly a thing you could say to me that would offend me. If you ask me, are you Australian Aborigine? I would not be offended. I do not care. If you ask me if I'm whatever, I've been asked everything. I don't care. I was asked by a guy from Iran, are you from Iran? I always remember the call because it cost me about $10,000 to $15,000. About 10 to 15K. But I felt it was a compliment. So I do not get offended by other people. I just other people's thinking that I'm looking like
if they ask you.
A different ancestry, whatever that is. I don't care. So I don't know. I'm wondering about how we can change our dialogue to open up communication. I'm not saying we certainly are rude enough as a culture. I don't need to encourage rudeness because the toxicity level's up. So we're rude, but also, as liberals in particular, we aren't very good at expressing our opinions, is what I've seen. And I mean that in a multitude of ways. I either see over the top expressing an opinion to the point where you're just, like almost assaulting the person. Jeez, it's too much. It is, some of the people I've seen. And I'm speaking for my own camp here. And then there's and within liberal, there's like me who just sits there and lets you talk and talk and talk. And if you're friends with me, this is notice. Like you get to talk and talk and talk probably if you're friends with me without me voicing my opinion. You're probably going to hear more of my opinion here than you hear. You might go, what? She thinks that? And the people that are really super close to me, they know my opinions. But sometimes I'll let them go on and 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 on. And sometimes I'll even agree. Just because I'm too tired to voice my opinion. And no, it's not Republican. It's not a Republican people I'm talking about here. I'm not saying I always voice my opinion around my Republican friends, but I will say that I have had better luck. It's a little ironic too. Not always true, but it's a little ironic because there's certain opinions that things I don't necessarily discuss as much, but when I do, I discuss them truthfully. And so I guess what I'm saying, it sounds really generalized. I'm not saying that all liberal people don't express their opinions. I'm saying my experiences, it's a little different. And also I think it's funny that I was saying that European people and then these specific countries, Colombia and Brazil, had a little bit more punch to them, in terms of voicing their opinion, just being a little bit more blunt, rough around the edges. And then I said, kind of reminds me of Republicans. At least they voice their opinion. I think that's funny. Because I have to say, it is true. You may not agree with them, but Republicans voice their opinion. And I'm going to stop this because that is just about 34 minutes, not quite. So good night or good day.